was the worst secondhand embarrassment you've ever felt? Story 1 had a guy walk into class in college late. It was auditorium seating, and the only open spaces were on the fourth row in the middle, about 25 rows in total, and about 50 seats per row. This guy walks in and sits down 15 minutes in a lecture and opens his laptop, which as soon as the lights boot up, starts blaring, and at the build up to the big finale to boot. He couldn't log in fast enough or mute it since he wasn't logged in. So he slammed it shut, put it in his bag, and walked out with it still blaring at full volume. We heard it finally stop as he was about to leave the building. Story 2, a girl graduating from college falling down repeatedly on the stage. She fell at least 3 or 4 times, and it was like something invisible was sweeping her leg out from under her. Even she had a WTF expression on her face. Story 3 was going down an escalator at the Mall of Georgia when the 90-something-year-old guy in front of me very suddenly his pants. We were about 500 feet from a bathroom, and he was wearing shorts. I felt so bad for him. My dad gave him his hoodie to wrap around his waist. I was very proud he was my dad in that moment, and still am. Story 4, a colleague of mine put in his 2 weeks. For context, he's a fairly attractive man. Well, this woman from HR of all places comes by his cubicle to, wish him well, I guess, anyway. She basically gave him a right there in front of the whole office. Was at dinner party when my friend's mother-in-law asked another one of our friends when her baby was due. She wasn't pregnant. Anyway, Emile should have simply apologized, but instead doubles down with something to the effect of it sure looks like you're pregnant. Story 5, I was ringing a girl and her up, and she was a few dollars short on her transaction, then got in my face and insisted her Red Bulls were BOGO. It is true they were BOGO, but the promo had ended months earlier. This man proceeds to yell and scream at me for 5 minutes about how she deserves these drinks, and how dare I yada yada. This whole time his GF was trying to disappear into the chip display, like Homer sliding into that bush, just dying of embarrassment. Eventually, after I threatened to trespass him, he gave me the biggest eye roll I have ever received and spat on the floor, and told his GF, "Let's get out of here. This clearly gets off on denying beautiful women what they need," his exact words. I was selling some kettlebells on Facebook Marketplace, and a woman, early 40s maybe, bought them. She came to pick them up, and as I handed them over to her, she obviously wasn't expecting them to be as heavy as they were. And as she suddenly strained to counter the weight, she ripped the most extreme of farts you have ever heard. It was gargantuan. I was shocked, but also proud. I'm usually pretty good at making light of any situation, but I found myself speechless for the first time in my life. If I could, I would have returned serve, but even on my best day, I don't believe I could create such a symphony. We both kind of stared into each other's eyes, and she said, "Well," and turned around and walked off. I think about her often. Story 6, I'm sure everyone felt this for me. I walked into work one day, and everyone was standing around, and I was like, what happened? Someone die? Yep, guy I worked with took his life. Story 7, that time my old roommate told a table full of his family that AIDS and cancer are the same thing. Just after talking about how much he's been learning from his night classes, those classes were being paid for by his parents, and spoiler alert, he wasn't attending any classes. They realized it by the time dinner was over. Story 8, I was a server in an Americana restaurant, and a family came in, and the mother was berating everyone. She yelled at the server and complained about the food not being the right temperature, and then she thought it was too salty, etc. She really had it in for the 17-year-old server. He was fine, but the customer wanted to pick at someone. Her husband and teenage children looked embarrassed. She had been like this before. There's a sign on the door that said we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone, and management decided that this lady shouldn't eat with us again. So the manager went over and comped the meals and told them to leave and not come back. The woman was upset and left mean feedback. In response to feedback, a regular posted with a picture of the woman and her family. She quickly took down her bad feedback. She deserved the public upbraiding, but I was embarrassed for her family. Story 9, I went to an open house, and there was this older realtor helping the listing agent. He was excitedly walking around this empty house talking about features while looking back at my husband and he ran head first in the chandelier that would be positioned over a dining room table. Had one been there. It happened so quick we couldn't even warn him. He got tangled in it and ripped it down as he fell face first to the ground, cutting himself up badly in the process. We both still cringe thinking about it. We saw him out at the supermarket recently, and both whispered, "Oh no." Story 10, when a colleague accidentally unmuted himself in a meeting and said something snarky about someone on the call. That particular call was being recorded too. Not me directly, but I had a colleague tell me he had been moderating a work-related town hall meeting on Teams, and the meeting was being recorded for publishing on the website. Some poor sod didn't realize his camera was on, and took his laptop into the bathroom with him to continue listening while he took a dump. Since most people had their cameras off, his video popped up beside the presenters on Teams, Needless to say, the recording was quietly lost. Story 11. Bless my ex-GF. She was a waitress, and we were out to dinner with my parents. My mother pulls to try to use an expired coupon move on the waiter. She simply refused to accept that time is a thing and that the written date had passed. While I zone out and wait for my mom to either win or be escorted out by management, my ex was apparently slowly losing her mind. She suddenly snatches the dollar bill size coupon from my mother's hand and eats it. Literally tore it and shoved the pieces in her mouth. She says that since there's no more coupon, there's no deal. It was nice having the crazy chick be crazy on the staff's behalf for a change. Story 12. I went to school for software development. Very difficult program. High fail rate. First day of second semester, we're hanging out chatting, and a guy I know from the program chats with us. Now in first semester, he struggled. We all knew he struggled. I was kind of surprised to see him. We were talking about grades, and he says, "Oh, wow, you guys saw your grades. How?" Yes, had got through the semester and never checked his grades. We pull up the school website, and he logs in, and we point him to the grade section. And he says, "What do these WS mean?" I look over, and he's got a W in 3 classes, which is basically a grade lower than F. It's like it did not complete. I'm like, that means you can't really be here right now. You should go talk to the registrar's office. He's honestly more confused than anything. He wanders off, and we never see him again. Story 13. A kid in boot camp his pants. We were at the rifle range all day, and they have to inspect every part of you to make sure you're not sneaking rounds back to the squad bay to shoot your DI with. So they told us to stand up, pull our trousers and skivvies down, and to turn around. One of the DIs goes, "What the is this?" And instinctively we all turn and look to see this pale, skinny 19-year-old that is all over his and Cammy's. I can't describe the humiliation and horror I felt. They made him march with his trousers around his ankles around the squad bay until our senior DI came out to see what was going on. I don't think for a week after that. It was like my body stopped producing out of fear. We had 63 guys in our platoon, and he was the only one who didn't graduate. Story 14. My old boss, who was basically IRL Michael Scott, was describing a coworker on the first day she came in for an interview. He described her, to her face, as Viagra with legs. Story 15. That lady who took out like half the Tour de France peloton with her stupid sign. I only saw it on TV, but that secondhand embarrassment reverberated across the world for me. If that was me, I would be looking into planetary relocation. I can't imagine it. I still think back on it and feel a sense of relief that I have never upped that badly before. Story 16. I worked retail during COVID. This family would come in, normal-looking, mom in her 40s, 2 middle school kids, except for the dad, who wore a Halloween Mike Myers mask with tape over the mouth and slave written in blood across the forehead. Then they would just shop. But his wife and kids looked like they wanted the sweet release of death every second. Edit, I should have been more clear. This is when mask mandates were in effect. Story 17. This was years ago. Met a lady 40-ish who had a piercing in an unusual spot upper lip, about half an inch away from the nose and more towards the cheek. It was a plain circular piercing. My friend in 20s who knew the lady sort of reached out to touch it, saying, "Sorry, you've got something on your face." She gently recoiled. He tried again. This was with others in the vicinity. I died a bit that day. Story 18. A long time ago, I worked at an airport where we had an office with a big glass, tinted window through which we could watch the passengers and arrival hall goings-on. 3 of us were sitting at the window doing paperwork. We were all so extremely tired after a long shift when one of the guys I worked with took a glance out and spotted one of our coworkers he didn't like through the window. He proceeded to tell us the most vicious rant. "Look at that fatso," and so, etc. etc. Looks like a warthog, just on and on with the most descriptive insults. Turns out, I guess Bring's so tired, he had spotted her reflection in the window, and she was actually standing behind us. It was just us 3 and her in the room. I beeped reversed out of that room. So quick. Story 19. A random acquaintance at a party seemed to be weirdly obsessed with my race, and during every conversation topic, he managed to make some bizarre joke about me being black. All the jokes fell flat, but after every joke, he'd anxiously look at me and say, "That's not offensive, is it? Because I'm not racist." Laughed it off and managed to get away from him, but he spent the rest of the night periodically coming up to me and saying sorry about those jokes earlier despite me, saying it was fine, and he just would not drop it. Everyone at the party had horrible secondhand embarrassment, including me. Story 20. A new guy started at work, and a couple of us were standing around just bullshitting. A lady that also works there who is fairly rough around the edges walks by, and the new guy looks at other guy we were chatting with and states, "I feel bad for her husband." It was her husband we were talking to. A guy poured his heart out, confessing his admiration and respect for a male teacher and requesting him to be his personal mentor, that he would follow his teachings like a disciple. in a very long message with lots of pleading and reasoning. I know this because he accidentally used the group chat with every single person in the Facebook group for the school on it. I still cringe 10 years later from reading it. Story 21, sitting at a desk at my new job with 4 other new hires. It was like our 4th day, and a new guy was there. All we heard was that his wife had been having a baby, so he started a couple days late. One guy asked him if it's a boy or girl. He says it was a boy. Asks how he's doing. The guy says actually the baby didn't make it. Got real quiet after that. Story 22 wasn't there personally, but it has since become a bit of a legend at the school I went to and worked at a fairly large flight school attached to a university. We had a couple thousand people enrolled in the program that went all the way from 0-hour student pilot to multi-engine flight instructor, and on clear calm days you can guarantee that there would be a handful of student pilots doing their first solo flight. One student, having completed his 2 landings by himself, taxied off the runway and switched over to ground control and asked for clearance to taxi back to the ramp and complete his first solo flight. Ground obliged, gave him clearance, and congratulated him on a solo well done. Solo student read back the instructions, but for some reason forgot to take his finger off the microphone button. Anyone tuned into ground control could not only hear, but could do nothing to interrupt or stop him as he sang a song of his own invention about how much he loved the aircraft he was driving. For 3 whole minutes, this poor serenaded the 50 or so pilots, ramp workers, air traffic controllers, and flight supervisors with "I love you, Cessna. I love you, Cessna," as he taxied back to the ramp. Eventually, he realized he was on the air, took his finger off the button, enabling ground control, got back on the frequency, and, over the howls of the tower cab crew laughing so hard it hurt, the controller thanked him for the song and would pass along the compliment at the next opportunity. Story 23, that time, Ashley Simpson performed on SNL, and the wrong song came on for her fake performance, and she just kind of stood there for a minute, then did a little jig. Story 24, smoke break at a tech support call center. A really pretty girl asked anyone there for a smoke, and a pencil neck geek got her one quickly and insisted on lighting it. For the next 10 minutes, he attempted to dominate conversation, because this was about him and her, and he now had some sort of shot. We were all standing around a garbage can with an ashtray on top. It was stuffed with bag lunches. The girl snuffs out her, but tries to put in one door of the garbage can, but it's a lock side. The geek says, "Allow me," and launches into a strip mall karate kick. The biggest kick his 90 pounds can muster. The garbage can goes over, and the ashtray scatters wet sand, ashes, and butts everywhere and on everyone. All the smokers take the last minutes of our break to pick up. The geek just stands there stiff like he's willing time to reverse before the time. He up and lost his true love forever. He stayed there even when the girl yelled at him to help. We finished cleaning up and left him standing there. Story 25, I recently went to an open mic night at a local comedy club. Each comic was terrible, except for one guy who was a comedy magician, so had to do some magic, then hilariously accidentally reveal how he did it. It just worked. The other 10 guys just bombed hard one after the other. As they say, the silence was deafening. I felt so bad for them that I would sort of laugh, even if it wasn't too funny, and that sort of okay, that's slightly amusing, but I was also in the front row, so they could see that I was kind of on their side, so they'd target on me and try to be like Russell Peters, bantering with the crowd. Anyway, they all sucked except Magician, but I applaud them getting up there and bombing in public. I felt so embarrassed for them. Story 26, the first thing that comes to mind is watching a very high white dude at a party the other night try to explain that his friend gave him an N-word pass, then continually dig himself deeper into a hole by saying weird, vaguely positive things about black people for 15 minutes straight. Story 27, I went to a fundamentalist evangelical college and went to a version of Faust they put on at one point since I had a number of friends in it. For some reason, the director had them all the actors in these sparkly spandex skin-tight suits. This was a school where they still banned dancing, and sure enough, on opening night, the guy playing Faust has a giant erection for a solid hour of the show. Story 28, well, many years ago, when I was a kid, I was on holiday with my family in a remote location in Indonesia. It was in Hawaii, and there was a little party in the hotel restaurant, about half tourists and about half locals. Everyone had some food and a few drinks, and it was all going nicely. Then a guy gets up and taps his glass. He tells the entire gathering that, as a proud West Virginia man, he would like to share something very special to him from his culture. He proceeds to sing "Take Me Home," Country Road by John Denver, earnestly a cappella, with tears in his eyes. My father is a rather blunt kind of Australian man. He absolutely could not reel it in. I think he tried for about 30 seconds, but eventually just lost it and began laughing hysterically. So hard he cried. So hard everyone else near him began laughing too. Just because it was contagious in the background, The guy is still singing West Virginia, Mountain Mama. Story 29, I saw a friend who was upset that his girlfriend corrected his grammar, throw himself on a couch and kick his feet and pound his fists while he cried out, "Don't correct me, you're not my mom." She kicked him out of her apartment and broke up with him. I wondered how she lasted so long. Story 30, it was a funeral, and the pastor talked for about 15 to 20 minutes about his latest mission trip and all the fun they had, and only mentioned the deceased twice during the entire service, and even that was pretty generic, like he was a good man or he loved to work cattle. Actual quotes, forgot to invite to people who was supposed to give some sort of eulogy, made a joke to try to smooth things over, and I was one of the many that hugged the family and fled before it got even more awkward. Story 31, watching a guy do an aerial silk routine to Imagine Dragons, and he got tangled and stuck and couldn't move, and they had to stop the show and lower him to the floor, face first. I had to go outside to cool down because I couldn't stop laughing. Story 32, we were at an all-inclusive resort in Jamaica. Every night they had this common area where folks could do karaoke. A middle-aged gentleman got up and started the first few lines of Lionel Richie's Easy. Some random lady from the audience ran up and attempted to sing the song with the gentleman. He kindly pushed her away 2 or 3 times as she tried to sing over his shoulder into the microphone. Finally, she just stood there dejected, swaying from side to side like an idiot, as the man broke from his song and professed his love for his girlfriend, and wrapped up with a marriage proposal. They hugged, they kissed. The idiot girl went back to her seat. I will still never understand why that guy chose that song to use to propose. However, he was killing the vocals. Story 33, I went out with a friend of mine who is some older than I, but we're both boomers. We've gone lots of places, but it seemed like a switch flipped in her. She pushed her way in front of another customer at a jewelry store show. She started questioning another customer about her travel money pouch in detail, and the woman was backing up. I was so embarrassed for her. Last we went to lunch, and then Forever 21, and in both places she talked to the manager about turning down the music because it was too loud. You know, clerks have no control over the music they play. I wanted to crawl under a table. I'm not shy, but I am not rude. It was awful. Story 34 was on the subway going home from work when I lived in NYC. I was sitting down in a 3-row, and next to me was a 2 seats. A woman gets on the train and sits next to the window near me. Then a guy sits next to her. The guy tried to get her number, but she said no. Before he knew it, the doors were about to close at his stop, so he tries to run off. But the doors close, he sits back down in the seat he was at, and everyone is staring at him. He tries to get her number again, and she respectfully declines. He goes to get up to get off the train at the next stop and drops his phone and a bunch of his stuff. This is because his jacket was off and all his stuff fell out of his pockets. He then misses the chance to get off the train again. Before we got to the next stop, he would try to retrieve a few things that rolled since the train moved. He got his stuff and then got off the train. It was so freaking hard to watch this unfold. Story 35, I worked at a retail store, and my manager was a super try-hard, dorky kind of guy. He loved the sales manager and was obsessed with him, like to the point of adopting phrases and mannerisms. Anyways, one night we all went out for karaoke, and he, completely sober BTW, went up, said he was dedicating a song to the sales manager, and sang that Foo Fighters' There Goes My Hero song. I literally had to walk outside. I couldn't handle it. Story 36, I embarrassed myself enough on my own. One situation that comes to mind from years ago that haunts me, I was 9 months pregnant, bored out of my mind on a Saturday morning, and decided to go look for garage sales to pass time. I was also super young and poor and needed things for a house my ex and I had just rented. I went to a few and then turned into a small neighborhood I had not been in before. I see a house with tons and tons of things in garage and a few tables in driveway. I started picking through things, carrying some items, making a pile at one point. I'd say about 10 minutes go by, and an elderly woman came out the house and asked me how she could help me. And I replied I was just looking and would let her know if I needed anything. She looked at me really confused. My big dumb pregnant started going through some curtains and things when it dawned on me to ask prices on what I'd already put aside. I asked her if she could give me some prices. She replied, "Oh, honey, I've been looking for whatever died in that garage, but if you need some things I can help you out." I declined and waddled to my car. Story 37, I was out for dinner with my family, and my brother was a wheelchair user. He would have been a teenager at the time. A drunk woman came up to us, looked at him, then turned to my mom and asked is he like that famous astrologer. She meant Stephen Hawking. Story 38, my mom berated the out of the Kmart cashier. I think it was over something stupid like rewards points, huge line behind us, and I still had to check out my stuff after her. Story 39, waiting for a friend after class when he asked a girl had been interested in for a while, but had been missing from class for a few weeks, out for a drink. She said she was flattered but just lost her boyfriend in a motorcycle accident and wasn't in a good place. He apologized and stand there stunned while she asked the professor for an extension for an assignment. Trying to be nice, she turns back and asks him how the class has been. He said, "It's been all right, but the assignments have been killing me. I, too, died inside." Story 40, I was getting ready to ship off to war, and the girl I had been dating, but yet to be intimate, I was desperately in love with her, came back to my hotel room. So we could change, and then head to dinner. She told me she needed to change clothes and acted as she was about to undress, to which I told her, "Oh, you can change in the bathroom." It wasn't until later that I realized she was wanting to get down, and I blew it. I had first-hand and second-hand embarrassment. I was a real player. Story 41, when a mildly popular travel vlogger decided to sing an original song at every destination he visited. Not only did the music sound like cheesy 90s karaoke, but the lyrics were insipid. And he couldn't sing for her. I mean, he was awfully brave to try to do that, but it was terrible. Luckily for his viewers, he stopped doing that after just a few episodes. The comments were not kind. Story 42, my ex had a massive ego, and one of the things he had an ego about was football, even though his team was an incredibly low division and had never won. One day, I drove him to his game, and as we approached the field, he goes, "Oof, yes. These guys are total middle-aged losers. We're going to beat them for sure," and kept going on about how some of them were fat, ugly, balding, probably only playing to get away from their wives and shitty home lives, etc. I stayed mostly quiet during this. I hate when people insult others based on looks. Something ID told him off for multiple times, and simply told him good luck. They lost 7-0. Not just that, but this game pushed them to be knocked down into the next lowest division because they'd lost by too much. At the time, I felt massive secondhand embarrassment for him, but now I just think LMAO karma. Story 43, my friend and I were both texting someone we were upset with separately, but at the same time, she took a screenshot of their conversation to send me and sent it to them instead. Story 44, a kid in my high school wore a toga to school for Toga Day, except he got the day wrong. So he just showed up, half naked and wrapped a sheet when no one else was dressed up. Story 45, when I was 18, 20 years ago, I worked at Starbucks as a barista, and I loved it. During the summer of 2004, my grandfather passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. I was working when it happened, and my mom came in to give me the news, and I left. A few days later, I'm back at work, and it's a full crew there that day, and we were busy. Right before I hit the floor, my manager called me into the back to check in on me, and to also tell me that she had gotten feedback from her district manager that I crushed the interview I had with him for a shift supervisor position at a new store opening up. I was super jazzed and hit the floor ready to go. That day, I was working drive with Jackie, and she could be a ball of energy. Whenever we worked together, she would make these double-shot slammers that had 4 pumps of white mocha for raw sugar packets and topped with whipped cream. So essentially, you were left with 2 cranked-up baristas making drinks, sweating, and heart palpitating. During the shift, it was announced that I was being promoted, so everyone was really happy for me. They were also really sweet about my grandfather passing as well. It was a bittersweet day. As I'm making some drinks at the bar, I notice a card being passed around, and it's not making it to me. So I figured it was a condolences card for the loss of my grandfather. At one point, I see Jax grab it and write a message and hand it to my manager. At the end of my shift, they gave it to me, and it was full of sweet sympathy messages from everyone. But then my eye is drawn to a message that says, "Get it? Congrats, I'm so proud of you. You better not be a stranger around here, or you'll be dead to me." Jax, her being hyped up on caffeine, and in a rush thought that it was a congratulations card for my promotion. I started laughing when realizing what she did, and another coworker read it, and in front of everyone clocked her on it. Jax was mortified and took it really hard. I told her that I thought it was funny, as in to not even stress it. She spent the rest of her shift embarrassed and took it really hard, profusely apologizing for the rest of the day. Needless to say, she probably reads the group card now, before she signs it. College class in a big auditorium, professor very strict about attendance on test days, day of final exam. Literally, as the professor is closing the door, a girl who is nearly late every day comes running in and up the steps to her seat near the top row. She tripped halfway up and rolled down a few steps, then started doing the Peter Griffin skin knee routine. Story 46, my son was really involved in sports, regularly in national tournaments. He went to practices 4 times a week. Obviously, his coach, really important person in my son's life, and my family had heard a lot about him. So when my parents came to a tournament that was near them, they finally got to meet his coach. My dad shook his hand and said, "Nice to meet you, my brother," exactly like Tom Hanks in the SNL sketch. I wanted to melt into the floor. Story 47, my BIL and his wife had a contentious divorce. The pinnacle came when she posted all of their tax returns for several years with no personal information blacked out on FB and IG. She was trying to show everyone my BIL's actual earnings in relation to what she was getting in spousal support, which apparently she thought was unfair. Of course, all of her personal info was laid out too. The replies had zero sympathy for her. Just things like, I know you're mad, but you gotta take that down, or he should sue you for posting this stuff. Very cringe. She wouldn't back down, but she did disappear from social media about a week later. I haven't seen her since, and this was like 10 years ago. TBH, I was surprised how much my bail made though, way more than his older brother, my hubby. So, in a way, it kind of backfired and made him look really successful. Story 48 went to a cousin's wedding many years ago. The bride got drunk at the reception, and in her speech started bagging her ex-husband and gushing over her boss who was there with his wife. Story 49, I didn't even have to be alive to be embarrassed for my mom dating in her 20s. Apparently, she was on a date with a guy she really liked, and she ordered a salad BC. She didn't want to get anything in her teeth. Then, mid-conversation, she bit into a cherry tomato, and it exploded and squirted across the table and blew out the candle in the middle of the table. I die every time I think about this. Story 50, I went to a small hospitality class with a guy I was seeing because they were presenting a graded project. When it got to this one girl's turn, she connected her laptop to the projector and opened her Google Drive. First thing that pops up on the big screen in a room of 30 to 40 people was a video of her using a vibrator on herself. She closed it quickly, but we clearly saw. Story 51, we were at Denny's and my dad was doing the ketchup bottle smack to the side thing. Well, he was so into his story, and he hit it so hard ketchup shoots across onto the lady. Sitting to his left, she was wearing white. Story 52, a girl went up in front of hundreds of people to accept an award, but all she heard is the name Olivia, and assumed it was her. But the actual winner was also named Olivia. And when they realized they gave the award to the wrong Olivia, because the actual winner came up, she screamed and burst into tears and ran off stage. Story 53, I used to work at McDonald's. One of my coworkers was mopping the floor, and some kid's mother made a comment to her child about getting a good job. So it doesn't end up mopping floors, blah, blah. So my coworker turns to her and says, just trying to pay for my mom's chemo. He'll never forget the look on her face. Keeping in mind that this guy's mom was not sick at all. He was taking the... Story 54, witnessing a fully grown adult man have an absolute meltdown at SeaWorld, BC. He had wanted to pet a stingray, and literally lightning was coming down from the sky. So he couldn't. He tried arguing with the employee and everything, and she didn't know what to say to him, BC. He kept going. Story 55, my sister-in-law went to tell her grandparents that she was pregnant, and they thought it was a joke. Ultrasound photos in hand, she's getting more upset by the minute, and a slow look of horror starts taking hold of them as they realize that 1, they have up, and 2, oh no, she really is pregnant. My mother-in-law tries to smooth things over, but only manages to make things more awkward. The family takes a 5-minute break to collect themselves, and I'm not sure what my mother-in-law told them during the break, but threats of eldercide are not out of the question. In any case, it's all 4 smiles and congratulations after the break. Despite her grandparents' concerns, my sister-in-law has actually turned out to be a great mom, but that was some weaponizable levels of cringe. Story 56, y'all remember that one scene in Pitch Perfect 2 where they're at the riff-off and that one girl starts singing her original song. Yeah, the secondhand embarrassment is so severe, I can't physically bring myself to watch that scene. Story 57 got a service call about a heating and air unit being loud all night. It was her toy left on in the drawer. Didn't know how to tell her. Still embarrassed the dude who showed up to a cameras on Zoom meeting for several hundred HQ-level employees at my global company. He gave a full frontal naked view. Story 58, that video of Fergie singing the national anthem at that basketball game. It was so bad. I showed the video to my dad, and he immediately got a severe ear infection that gave him vertigo. Story 59 at one of my best friend's wedding. Our other friend was the best man and gave hands down the worst best man speech I've ever heard. Between the anxiety and zero prep, it was a bombing of epic proportions, stumbling on words. Jokes fell flat. Just awkward. Wasn't even drunk yet later that night. He asked why I didn't save him. I'm like, dude, there was no saving that. You should have prepared something. I would have bombed too. That said, he's fairly upper management at a company that everyone here knows. He's given speeches and spoken to CEOs, industry leaders, conferences, etc. I expected better. Story 60, a person from another department who I hadn't seen in a while walked up to me one day at work and said, congrats. What do you do? My response, big grin on my face. So I'm not pregnant, just fat. He was mortified. I thought it was hilarious, but he was mortified.